I'm sure we all know the character of the boogeyman at least one way or another. If you don't, it's a children's bedtime story where a monster comes to you in the night and is usually used to scare children into behaving. And if you were around in 2015, you may remember a game by a similar name during the indie horror boom, where you play as a young boy trying to defend yourself against him over the course of 7 nights. And yeah, this was a FNAF inspired game, but it was 2015, well it wasn't. And I never really played the original game, however I did play the sequel released in 2017, and I could never beat it. And this was new for me because in 2017 I had played games such as Tattletale, the first few chapters of Bendy, Alien Isolation, and every FNAF game and fan game up to that point. And while objectively these games aren't scary at all, we've got to remember I was 11 at this time, this stuff was the pinnacle of horror to me. And yet, I couldn't beat this game due to the sheer amount of fear I felt to the point that I would turn the volume all the way down, or just outright close the game before being jump scared. So, that's what I wanted to explore today. I wanted to know what little me saw in this game that was so terrifying. I wanted to know why I would close this game just out of pure fear. Now before we get to the main topic of this video, I first want to very quickly cover the first game in this trilogy, as while I have not played it myself, I'm kinda glad I haven't. The game is rough to say the least. From what I can tell, its mechanics are very janky, and from watching multiple playthroughs from Fusion Gamer 8-Bit Ryan, none of the environmental scares is that good, nor is the environment we play in. And don't even get me started on this old design for the boogeyman dude. He got the glow up of the century in the second game, and I am so glad he got that, because he just looks goofy here. The gameplay loop here and throughout the second game, however, are very similar. We're given a flashlight with limited charge, and we need to flash multiple entry points throughout our room to prevent the boogeyman from attacking. And at 6 AM, he vanishes. And that's pretty much it for Boogeyman 1. Boogeyman 2, however, now that's where things get interesting. In this game, we play as a young girl accompanied by a living doll that pretends to be helpful, but is honestly half the scare factor of this game. I'm sorry, what?
Don't worry, Mommy. I'm your friend.
Like, fuck you, holy shit.
You.
Holy shit. And the absolute best of boys, our dog, who I sadly couldn't find a name for, so I'm gonna call him Billy. Yeah, Billy. Unlike the first game where the boogeyman had limited number of locations he could come from and was very simple to deal with, here he's a lot more complex. The boogeyman can enter from both windows, the floor, under the bed, the vents, both doors of the closet, and our doorway, with many of these having multiple phases to keep track of that make him quicker and much quieter when he attempts an attack. Now that that's out of the way, I first wanted to take a look at just the sheer quality difference between the two games. I mentioned it very briefly before, but I'm not a fan of the first game's environment. While its cramped look seems like it would work well, there's just not that sense of chaos or stress that comes from a larger environment, as you can very easily just stop the boogeyman's advances in the first game, and everything overall just feels very static and unchanging. However, in the sequel, the environment, while in small ways, evolves as you play the game, with drawings on the wall becoming more and more twisted, with one specifically having more and more detail added each night as the image of the boogeyman is burned into our character's mind. Our character also has a lot more items in her room, which leads to some great distractions, ranging from a ball falling off the shelf with a massive thud despite seemingly being made of rubber, to the blaring sounds of a game being played on this Game Boy-like system that's totally not here to avoid copyright. The game also has a weather system this time around, which ranges from lashing winds and thunderstorms to all-encompassing snowstorms that drown out every little sound. And because the game is so audio-centered, having us listen for every small sound the boogeyman makes, these subpar scares and weather events have the ability to completely throw the player off and shatter any flow they may have had. Because I know for a fact, every time the game decided to trigger the video game console, I just completely snapped out of any flow I had and began to panic. Oh Jesus Christ, my ears! Okay, where is he, there? Okay, there, yeah. Jesus Christ. Another thing I think this game does amazingly compared to its predecessor is the rising tension created as the night goes on. as at the start we begin with multiple light sources, a fully charged flashlight, and no distractions. But as we progress, he will quickly begin destroying our lights faster and faster, sometimes destroying 2 or more just at the start of the night, leaving us in complete darkness with only our ears, the limited and slow charging battery of our flashlight, and brief glimpses of the boogeyman's eyes to tell us where he's coming from. And this, combined with how quick the boogeyman gets on later nights, even cloning himself to attack the player from multiple entrances, and how quiet his sounds actually are, alongside the tension of which entryway he and his multiple copies will use next, leads to some horrific scenarios where he can easily sneak up on you and create a sense of confusion and terror, as you never even heard him come in. And I think this is what scared me as a child, at least one aspect. In most other games I'd played to this point, there were very easy and clear indicators on when a threat was approaching. From the sounds of Freddy's laughs down the hallway, to the lights turning off and Tattletale yelling, "Mama's coming!" But the Boogeyman 2 completely removes that aspect, and even today it's absolutely horrific. It's that feeling of chaos and having no control over what happens next, with any little mistake having the possibility to lead to death that got me. But I don't think that's the only reason. As while I've only really talked about his mechanics, I haven't actually mentioned the Boogeyman's design that much. This time around, instead of being a grey malnourished monster we've seen 1,000 times before, he's an imposing figure. His silhouette is larger thanks to a trench coat and hat, and when the light is shined on him, we get brief glimpses of his near humanoid appearance, with tufts of hair hanging off the side of his skinless head, with no lips and sharp teeth, alongside his trench coat only barely hiding his sharp claws from view. And this is honestly a really good design, and I'm sure it will be used consistently and not reverted back to the ugly old one. Right? Right, guys? But with that said, the only thing I think the Boogeyman lacks in this game is just animations. And while the ones we have really work well, especially in the darkness of the room, once you take a closer look at them, you begin to realize how stiff his movements actually are. And to the devs' credit, they tried to give him flowing animations and motion capture, but when that fell through, they hand animated it. However, I do think in some cases, the stiffness actually adds to the horror. The way he darts across the room after entering your doorway to hide around the corner, or how he slowly opens entrances to your room if you're not quick enough, allowing him to enter quickly and silently. He will also attempt to catch you off guard by just randomly deciding to use new entryways you absolutely had no clue about, and you only notice that during their scans of the room, and just seeing this monster of a man climb through a window you didn't even know existed until this night. He's just, it's such a good way to show different ways of a character coming in and to scare you, dude. I mean, little me was so scared of this guy that, as previously mentioned, if I was too slow to catch him or I knew I was going to be jump scared, I would just close the game and walk away. Little me could not handle Boogeyman 2. And I honestly can't blame him, because the game is very overwhelming, especially on the later nights, with the Boogeyman attacking from multiple entry points and the weather outside getting louder and louder. And while nowadays it's not as bad as child me made it out to be in my memories, the game still revels in this chaos and atmosphere that makes up for a lot of its shortcomings, such as animations and inconsistent textures. And I would be amiss to not mention a challenge night in the form of Nightmare Night, where there's just consistent rain and audio events happening. And while you would think this is a really good challenge, once you get used to it, it's just a slightly harder 7 night. Now, to end off this video, I was actually really curious about what the third game had in store for me, as I couldn't find much gameplay on it at all, and I mean, not even Fusion C Gamer finished it, so it's kind of dead in the water. But since it released in 2023, a whopping 6 years after the second, I thought it'd be leaps and bounds better than the second game, and I was kinda disappointed. It does improve on graphics, but the gameplay is where it sorely lacks. Here, the Boogeyman will possess toys in your room to attack you, and you need to use a water gun this child just has to spray them away. There's also a shop system in this game. From what I can tell, it's not very useful, just extending your battery life, because you can't charge it in this one for whatever reason. But I mean, good on them for trying new things, I guess. Sadly, however, the Boogeyman is back to his grey appearance here as well, and I don't know why. His model in 2 is absolutely serviceable and goes so hard, it's just really weird they would change it. However, there is one redeeming quality. This game has an owl. This is peak boogeymaning right here. 10 out of 10 would play again. But that's all I could find surrounding this series, and honestly, it was a fun trip down memory lane looking at this old series from my childhood, and it was really fun to make. And if you have any old or new horror games you want to check out, comment them below or let me know in my Discord, because I would love to make videos on little gems of horror games that do certain aspects of horror really well in the future. Now, would I recommend you play any of the Boogeyman games? I mean, at least play 2. It's only a few bucks on Steam and it's probably cheaper in other countries, and it's a good short sweet horror experience if you're not too concerned about the story, you only want an hour or so of scares. But that's all for me. If you made it to the end of the video, I want to thank you all for the amount of support my last video got. I honestly didn't expect it to perform that well at all. So once again, thank you all, and I'll see you at whatever I make next. Bye bye!